Hi there, my name is Ron Rogers, and this presentation is titled Three Person to Two Person to One Person Cockpit. You've got to be kidding. And basically, the you got to be kidding applies to the two person to one person cockpit. I don't think the traveling public would ever go for a one person cockpit. Uh, I don't think it's a good idea, but maybe I'm an old fuddy duddy. But the one thing I must say is when I fly my biplane or when I fly my 310 by myself, apparently I don't ever make any mistakes. But when I flew with a crew, my co pilots are always pointing out, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. So, what's the takeaway here? Well, obviously, if you fly with other people, you make a lot more mistakes. So it's much better to be the only pilot on the aircraft. Right. Well, the main thing I'm going to talk about here is back when I started in the 70s, the three person to two person was a big issue. Now, you take an airplane like the 727 with the panel, you got lots of switches and stuff. You got a lot of things to do there. You need a third guy to operate all these switches. And of course, you can't reach them from any of the front seats. But you take an airplane like the 737, it was designed to be a two-person airplane. Okay, I got hired in 79. I was the bottom guy in my class because I was youngest. They did it by age back then. And I got the coveted 737 to Cleveland. Yes, I know. Excitement. So, there is no flight engineer ticket for a 737 because it doesn't need one. But they sent me through 727 school and then 737 school. All right. So I'm here in the coveted center folding seat. Now, if you've ever seen this folding seat in the center there, that is that is kind of a real uncomfortable seat. But there's even more uncomfortable seat that's just to the left of it behind the captain. You're really scrunched up there, and with my sitting height, I was bent over. Now, to tell you how important this second officer position on the 737 was, if a FAA guy came to give a check ride, you lost your seat. You went back up in the corner, and you couldn't hardly do anything. Okay, so I'm being checked out on the IOE, initial operating experience, by a guy who had been in this position for 11 years. And I said, "You would do this for 11 years? You got to be kidding." I guess he wanted the seniority. Okay, so they assigned me things to do. Well, one of the things I did was, you see that blue arrow there? I reached around the head of the captain to do things with the fuel panel. Well, this is where you found out immediately where you rated on the crew, because roughly half the captains would slap my hand and say, "You don't touch that." Okay. And the other part was you got to reach your hand around the head of the first officer there for the orange arrow to operate the pressurization panel. You couldn't reach really anything on the front panel, but you were supposed to do checks of a whole bunch of stuff. It was I hate to say it, but it was make work, and you'd check this stuff, and most of the time the captain would come in and he would check all the stuff. So I really felt like I wasn't needed there most of the time, and really, this aircraft was designed for two people. The airlines have been flying a small number of aircraft designed for two people. The Bach 111, the 737. Only a few airlines were flying it with three people. And when I was furloughed, what happened during the furlough was they did away with the third person on the 737, and it lengthened my furlough by about a year and a half. But you know what? I really didn't care. I did not like this position because I didn't like the seat. I didn't like where I sat. I didn't like the silly things they assigned me to do. And I didn't like half the captain slapping my hand and telling me not to do anything. So, President Reagan decided, because this was a political issue, they're going to have a task force on crew complement. And basically, this was rearing its head again because they were going to certify the DC 9-80 for two pilots. And ALPA was protesting this, saying, nope, it should be three pilots. And they also were coming up on the 757 and the 767I. Have a picture somewhere, I couldn't find it, but it actually shows the second officer station on the 767. Boeing actually built this, and there was one guy who told me he was checked out as the flight engineer on the 767, but unfortunately, this came out and they said, no, you don't need to have three people on that aircraft. Now, again, we had the old aircraft. We had the 727s. These lasted for quite a while during my career. I went second officer, co-pilot, and I flew captain on it. I really enjoyed this aircraft, but this was designed for 3 people. Again, look at all these switches and all these fun things to do. But those of you who have crewed the 727, you're familiar with the I-8, irregular procedure number 8. This is if you have a bus tie, generator, and or field lights on. And we should have had a separate checklist that was you're lost in the checklist if you had to deal with this. Now, I had talked to a gentleman in Alpa, United pilot. I was hired by United Airlines, and I had talked to him all during the furlough on ham radio. I'm a ham radio operator. He was also. And he knew about, in our discussions about my Air Force background, my flight test background, and all that sort of stuff, and my work at Cessna and my work at Boeing. And when I got recalled, he wanted me to come and be on this committee. And okay, fine. Well, I was busy doing with other stuff. We were moving that, and I really didn't get around to it. But no. He insists that that I be on this committee. So okay, I'll be on the committee. Why not? Sounds like fun. Well, it was kind of interesting in that I was a second officer and a new hire, and I was just off of probation. And here I was being recommended, and this was a presidential committee. You reported directly to the president of ALPA. This was considered high level because we were going to take on the crew complement issue. It was a new aircraft evaluation and certification committee. Okay, I'm the guy that United Airlines puts forward. 6,000 pilots, people who should have been qualified, and they put forth a second officer on the 727 at the time. Kind of strange. The head of the committee, Paul, who was a Pan Am senior captain, it was like, okay, you're the guy they put forward, but it was kind of scratching his head. And, well, I really didn't know any better at the time. The issue that was coming up was a follow-on of the DC-9-80. They were making further derivations of this aircraft, and ALPA decided that they were going to oppose this. So we're out there at McDonnell Douglas. At the time, it had not been bought by Boeing yet. So we're out at McDonnell Douglas, and we're looking this over, and we're getting a preview of it. And we come back, and we're sitting in the hotel room, and we said, looks good for us for 2 men. It's well designed. It functions well. It's the only aircraft I know of that you have to have a rear view mirror to look at the magnetic compass. But besides that, and also the tank slit for windows. But okay, certain old design factors were carried on. But as far as being operated safely by 2 people, yeah, it looked okay. And then we were kind of told by the committee chairman that he had been pretty much directed by the ALPA president to refuse this aircraft and say it's unsafe to be flown by 2 pilots. Well, interesting. So here I am, brand new, presidential committee, new guy. We sit down and we go, there's nothing wrong with this aircraft. If he wants us to say that, we're going to resign en masse as a committee. So my ALPA work would have been really short-lived. But this was sent back up line, and apparently they decided not to have the political embarrassment of the committee resigning, and did not oppose it. So the opposition to 3 men on the 37 and the DC-9 trying to hang on to this went away at that point. Now, you get a properly designed aircraft for 2 people, and you get the technological improvements, and this works well. I flew most of my career on 2-person aircraft, and of course, everybody knows now it works very well. But if you got an aircraft like the 747 designed for 3 people, you really need to fly it for 3 people. But funny thing, you can upgrade this aircraft, make it for 2 people, and there's plenty of 747 crews who have flown probably their whole career with 2 people, and it works very well. Same thing with the DC-10. It was originally built, of course, for 3 crew members. It's an older aircraft, but same thing here. You can upgrade it and make it for 2 people, and it works very well. Now, one thing I might add is the MD-10 has the MD-11 inspired 2-crew glass cockpit. And United Airlines had a bunch of DC-10s, and we ended up selling them to FedEx, and these were converted. And I went out to evaluate this conversion. What they did was they took what they called an advanced common flight deck that was used on the MD-11 that was launched in September of '96. They continued this by Boeing after they merged with McDonnell Douglas in '97, but the first MD-10 flew on April 14th, 1999. And the new cockpit eliminated the need for the flight engineer position, allowed common type ratings for the MD-11. And this allowed such companies as Federal Express, which operated both the MD-10 and the MD-11, to have a common pilot pool for both aircraft. So what they did was they took older DC-10s and they retrofitted them appropriately with modern cockpits and avionics and kept the airplane going for a longer life. Now, I evaluated as a member of the New Aircraft Evaluation and Certification Committee for ALPA. Like I said, we didn't resign that night, stayed on until eventually I become chairman of this committee, and I'll talk about that in some other presentations. But I went to several presentations by companies that were trying to extend the life on the 727 by making it a 2-person aircraft, and they just didn't approach it right. They basically took the second officer's panel there with the blue arrow, and they extended the center panel there with the orange arrow. And I have a pretty good reach, but I sat there and they basically didn't modernize anything. They didn't make the systems work better. This was a couple of companies that tried this, investors putting their money into this, but basically they just took and put everything on the overhead panel. And I had trouble reaching certain things, and this isn't the way to do it. You get some of the electrical issues you can have with the 727, and they take full attention of one crew member to do it, and there's not the automation, and it was just no, guys, you really have to automate it, and they weren't putting in that sort of effort to do it. These never flew, unfortunately. Of course, 727, it was getting long into the tooth. The engines aren't fuel efficient, stuff like that. So it kind of met the end of its life, at least in this country. They're probably flying around South America somewhere. But anyway, that's my discussion and a little bit of my personal history with the 3-person versus the 2-person crew. And we'll see what happens with this 1-person crew. I don't hold a lot of hope for that, and I hope that never comes to pass, but never say never. Anyway, thanks for watching.